Indeed, God is present here and now, and in that awareness, let us pray. Father, Mother, God, we give thanks for this opportunity to be open to the awareness of your presence. We use this moment to allow your love to flow through us in this moment, to fill us, to overflow from us into this, touching each and every one in this moment. And for the awareness of your love, we give thanks. And so it is that together we say, Amen. Well, good morning. Winter is coming upon us, it would appear, just in time for Christmas. Where's the love? Where is the love? Over the course, actually, I wasn't asking for a musical, but yeah, right. You're so used to that. Okay. So, normally, we talk about the Advent season, and we talk about the preparation for the arrival of the awareness of the Christ in us, in our consciousness. And we use the progression of faith and peace and love and joy as the 4 topics that bring us to Christmas. In the early days of the ministry, I rebelled against that sequence. I would talk about faith and love and peace and joy, not just to echo the progression in our call to worship, but also because it feels to me like love is a preamble to peace, and it is something we can practice. We have the faith, we practice the love, comes forth the peace, and arises the joy. So that is, in my mind, the natural progression of these Advent topics. However, I have not been able to change the order that the Daily Word will present those topics, so I've relented. I've said, okay, I'll just annotate that sequence as I present. So today we're talking about love. And I ask the question, where's the love? We look around our experience and we see all kinds of stuff going on, all kinds of challenges to bring forth the love. And one could look at that and say, well, that's opportunity for us to practice, right? And indeed, that might be the divine plan. But we have a large portion of our population, not necessarily a majority, but a large portion of our population that insists upon this being a Christian nation. Contrary to the intent of the founding fathers, nonetheless, if we want this to become a Christian nation, that we can choose. I mean, we can't go back and rewrite history, but we can, in fact, change how we are going to progress into the future. And if it is the desire of the majority of people to become a Christian nation, then, well, we've got some other challenges such as the Constitution that we have to deal with, but we can deal with that. Nonetheless, we look around and we see that there is, once again, the arising of another terrorist group. We see that here in our own country, there is a polarity of opinion that becomes not just a difference of opinion, but a substantial conflict between those positions. And whether it be the left or the right or the rich and the poor or whatever your poles are in that, there nonetheless seems to be an increasing level of conflict between the poles of our society. we see examples of intentions to pair social programs. There seems to be a lack of awareness of the injustice that seems to be going on in our society. There seems to be on the one hand, there is a demonstration that the institutions of power are not reflecting the will of the people, and on the other hand, there seems to be a rising up of opinion about the injustices that we see. We see social programs being paired. We see the intention of legislation to cut back on the retirees' paid-in benefits. So all kinds of stuff going on. And if we have, I have to ask the question, you may not have to, but I have to ask the question, if we are intent upon becoming a Christian nation, wouldn't it be a good idea to follow the advice of the person who so demonstrated the presence of the Christ in him? That is Jesus. And so we look at the principles that he offered, and we in unity have taken those principles, and I've lost my clicker. Where did my clicker go? Oh, here. Thank you. So many different places for this to land now. And so we have, don't we have the 5 pillars of faith? I thought we had the 5 pillars of faith. We're going to come down to the 5 pillars of faith. Where can we all sing hymns together here? Or carols? There it is. Okay. So we have these 5 pillars of faith, or these 5 principles upon which unity is founded. The first is the premise that there is one power and one presence. There is no opposition to God, but rather there is one power. The second is the proposition that the Christ is in each of us, and that proposition is something that we can in fact prove if we choose. And so we have the premise, we have a proposition, we have the process of the thoughts held in mind being manifest in our experience, and we can test that, and we can see that that process is indeed a valid process. It is a universal law, that those things that we think about become the way we encounter our experience. And the way we encounter our experience is going to be how we respond to our experience, and how we respond to our experience is going to be our experience. So, this process of thoughts held in mind manifest in our experience is a very real thing that logically and experientially we can prove. The tools of transformation, the practice of prayer and meditation, we talked briefly about that last week. Denials and affirmation. Denials not being something that we deny the truth of, but rather we deny the power of. So whether we have a modest income, or whether we have a relationship that seems to be going sour, or whether we have a boss that seems to not understand why I did what I did, whatever those experiences are, we can deny the power that we place on those, and then allow our thinking process to be modified with the affirmations that we put in place. So this practice of prayer and meditation, denials and affirmations, are ways that we can transform our thinking process. And when our thinking process is transformed, we go back up to principle number 3, and we see that our life experience will in fact change because we've changed our thinking process. And then the 5th principle is that the promise that if we practice these things, our life will improve. Our life will become glorious. Our life will change because we chose to change it. Okay, so those are the principles that have come out of the work of the founders of Unity, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, and it came out of their study of the teachings of Jesus. So if we want to say that we're going to be a Christian nation, we can choose to do that if we choose, but let's follow the teachings that teacher has offered us. Well, okay, so let's look then at in John 21, verses 15 to 19. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" And Simon said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And Jesus said to Simon, "Feed my lambs." A second time, Jesus said to Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And he said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And Jesus said to him, "Well, tend my sheep." And he said for the third time, he said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And Peter felt hurt because he said to him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know I love you." And Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep. Very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you used to fasten your own belt and go wherever you wished. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will fasten a belt around you and take you where you do not wish to go." And the insert that the writer of John offered some 70 years after the crucifixion is Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which he would glorify God. And after this, he said to him, "Follow me." Okay, so John, as noted, was written substantially after the crucifixion. John was written probably not by the disciple that we know of John, but rather by the school that the disciple had around him. And that was the way in those times, is that you go to be taught, and then you practice and you teach. And those that you teach become the school that surrounds you. And this school of John was probably the author, someone in this school, or maybe several in this school, were the authors of this book some 70 years after the crucifixion. This was in a time, by the way, when the average age was in the neighborhood of 35 to 39. So you were an old man if you got to be 39 years old. So it would be difficult for us to imagine that someone who was in the same age range as Jesus at the time Jesus' ministry would live to be 100 or 110 years old to write this. That's why it is thought that this comes out of the school that John taught. All right, so we have these teachings that come out of the school of John, and they are a reflection of John's understanding of the teachings of Jesus. Okay, so they're a reflection of the understanding that John had of the teachings of Jesus. So we can't look upon these and say, "Oh, well, this is what Jesus said." Rather, we can look upon this and we can say, this is what a witness to the teachings of Jesus taught his students, and his students understood Jesus to have said. All right, now that I've just quashed your belief in the Gospels altogether, let me say that there is nonetheless, in this writing, there are some very real truths that are reflected elsewhere in the Gospels. Throughout the book of John, though, love is the predominant message. Love is talked about in a number of different ways. And while I do not know Greek, I do know of those who do know Greek, and those who do know Greek, as scholars, they look at this and they say, when John talks about love and we read about love here, we are hearing actually several different Greek words. And those several different Greek words offer a little bit different flavor of love. We see it as love, but the writer of John would be talking about parental love, or it would be talking about sibling love, or it would be talking about erotic love, as one would have for a spouse, or it would be about brotherly love, one would have for a friend. So these are different flavors of love that are talked about in the Greek that we see as love. Nonetheless, there is overarching all of these, as a model for all of these, is a love that flows from the heart of God, unconditionally, into and through each one of us. That is what each of these loves that we experience point to. They point to because And they're not a reflection of that love, but they point to the love, because all of these other loves, I think you will also agree, all of these other loves are conditional. I have brotherly love for my brother as long as he doesn't betray me. I have an erotic love for my lover as long as my lover is in frequency with me. I have love for my child as long as my child doesn't harangue me until they get be 14 years old. I have love for my sibling as long as my sibling doesn't tell me that I am all washed up. Then I'm a little bit questioning that love that I've offered my sibling. I probably have love for my parents regardless, but there are times when I just can't stand being in the presence of my parent, because she talks to me about my beard being too long, or she talks to me about why I don't comb my hair more often, or why in the world I got into ministry. Okay, so and my mom, my parents are long departed, and so if she is monitoring this presentation, she has already learned forgiveness, so I'm okay. All right, so all of these different flavors of love that we experience in this world are conditional love, with the exception of that one unconditional divine love that flows through us and is accessible by us whenever we choose to let it be. To let it be unconditionally, without limitation, without constriction, without conditions being placed upon it. Those limitations that we put on this unconditional love is what causes us to say, well, that just doesn't feel right. I saw a post. In fact, several people in this congregation saw the post that was put up by Ann Brisnahan. That was elephant.com. It's a blog, and I've seen the writer before. The writer is a fairly young single female, from what I can gather. But she suggested that when we love and when we like, we have that flipped around. It's upside down. The sequence is wrong. She says that normally we like someone and we progress into loving someone. We find someone that has similar interests, or someone who has a vibrant personality, or someone that has the same opinions as I do, and so there is a likeness that occurs. And then that likeness will mature into love. And she said that actually is probably wrong. She didn't say it's actually wrong. She says it's probably wrong. And you can test it. If you take the attitude that I love everybody, and she even suggested that if you go out on a date, that you say you love the other person on the first or second date, and get that out of the way. Okay? And if the person doesn't run screaming out the door, then you have the opportunity to come to like that person. If you love that person first, you are actually following what Jesus offered. Love God with all your heart, and love your neighbor as yourself. And then if you begin to like that person, if indeed you have some kind of compatibility that comes into your life, that that person really resonates with you, or that person causes you to light up in your life, wonderful. But start with the love. Well, that's an interesting thought. And it's a very Christian thought, it turns out. As we look at this idea of love everyone first, there's a thought perhaps in consciousness that if we love everyone first, then how are we going to get our way? We don't have anything to offer to the person that that we can't take back. That is, if we love first, and, well, gosh, how am I going to get that person to buy me the present that I want to purchase for Christmas? How am I going to get that person to do what I want the person to do? If I love unconditionally, well, Jesus offered this. Now, this is earlier in the book of John. Again, it's written by the students of John. It's written in the school of John. It's written during the time that is known as the Last Supper, just after the Last Supper, and it's known as the Prayer of the Nations. So, beginning in verse 6, you can read the whole thing if you want. I've just pulled out this center section of this Prayer of the Nations. It's interesting that biblical scholars will look at this and they'll say that it's obvious that this is not the words of Jesus because it is so verbose. It is not the concise, down-to-earth language that is quoted as Jesus using back in the first gospel that was written, Gospel of Mark. So I have made in the prayer to God, I have made your name known to those whom you gave me from the world. They were yours, and you gave them to me, and they have kept your word. Talking about the disciples. Now they know everything you have given me is from you. For the words that you gave to me I have given to them, and they have received them and know in truth that I came from you, and they have believed that you sent me. I am asking on their behalf. I am praying on their behalf. I am praying for them. I'm not asking on behalf of the world. I'm not praying for the world, but on behalf of those whom you gave me, because they are yours. All mine are yours, and yours are mine, and I have been glorified in them. And now I am no longer in the world, but they are in the world, and I am coming to you. Holy Father, protect them in your name that you have given me, so that they may be one, as we are one. While I was with them, I protected them in your name that you have given me. I guarded them, and not one of them was lost except the one destined to be lost. And the writer is referring to Judas here, so that the scripture might be fulfilled. So, here if we look upon the stuff that is happening in our world, and we see this going on over here, and we see that going on over here, and we see this there and that there, and we say, where is the love? This passage is actually pointing to it. When in unity we talk about prayer as not being a change of the conditions of the world, but rather to change consciousness. And it's not the consciousness out there, but the consciousness in here. It is about changing our own consciousness. And if we use that principle as we look at this passage, what Jesus is doing is Jesus is praying to maintain his own consciousness, not changing the world, not changing the conditions, but rather changing his own consciousness so that he can continue to see his disciples as they are in fact. That is, expressions of God. So, as he is practicing this prayer, as he is continuing to reinforce in his own mind the divinity of those that are around him, so it is that we can practice that. We can pray that we hold in our own consciousness that those out there that seem to be doing stuff that is contrary to what we think is right and true, that we hold in our own consciousness that they are, in fact, expressions of God here and now. So this is what we can do. This is where the love is. The love arises as a result of our choice. It is our own throttling that causes the love to disappear from our experience. It is our choice to let that love of God flow through us, to let it come into our experience, to let it be an expression of God for those who we are in contact with, and to not And to not say, where's the love? Why isn't that person doing what's right? Why is that injustice being done over there? The answer is that we have the opportunity to be the expression right now, even in the face of all of that. Does that make sense? Where's the love? It's here. What choice do we have? To love or not love? To condition our love or to allow it to flow unconditionally? What are we drawn to do? That is up to your experience and your interpretation of the message that is given to you. If unconditional love offers to you in this moment that you are to sit on your butt and not do a thing, then sit on your butt and not do a thing. If unconditional love tells you in this moment to speak up, to stand up, to raise your voice, and to declare that here is an injustice and this injustice needs to be addressed, then stand up and declare that this is an injustice and this injustice needs to be addressed. But let the love tell you that. Don't let the ego dictate that. Let the love tell you that. And it will. Listen. Be quiet. Allow that love to flow through you from the heart of God. Allow it to fill you and spill from you. And hear what the message is. And the message will be love. Love. And then move your feet. We'll have our meditation. As we come into breathing into this moment, allowing this moment to be empty of everything but love. Let the thoughts go. Turn the attention to the heart. Feel the calling of love deep within the heart. Let go of the constriction, the limitation, the conditions. Allow the love to swell up, filling your heart, filling your body, filling your consciousness. Let it spill out into this moment. A practice that was once suggested to me was that when you hear a siren, just take a moment and bless all of those that are around that siren. The person experiencing the emergency. The loved ones of the person. The medical personnel that are responding. The police and the fire that are responding. Just see them in the light, the love. While in our own consciousness, those sirens can be the fear or the anger or the frustration. And when you hear those sirens in consciousness, respond with love. Letting love flow, spill out, and bless. And with this practice, aware of the sirens in our own consciousness, responding with love. Let us come back into this time and space, sharing the words of the Lord's Prayer.